There is one simple trick for figuring out where your writing needs to improve. This applies to either improving your writing in general or if you're like trying to improve a specific novel. All you need to do is ask yourself, what scares me the most? What is that one thing that's so hard to fix that it feels impossible? What's the one thing I don't know how to fix or improve? Easy, right? You know what else is easy? Subscribing to my channel. I disconnected the electric shock thing from the subscription button. People did not like that. Shocking, I know, but they don't like it. Click on the subscribe button. You won't get a shock. I promise. It's very easy to get stuck fixing problems we know how to solve or improving at things that we are already good at. All of this ignores the fact that there's usually some larger, often hairier problem that needs to be fixed in order for us to improve. Allow me to illustrate with an analogy. There was this hotel that had this problem where every time a guest would arrive at the lobby, they would look up at the facade of this hotel and then immediately run away. So the managers got together to try and address the problem. They noticed that the sign outside was kind of faded, so they fixed that, but the problem remained. The awning over the entry had a bunch of holes in it, so they fixed that. Likewise, there was no improvement. They noticed that the lobby had this horrible, like, smoky smell, so they got some air fresheners and some flowers, but that didn't really help. They tried a bunch of other things, fixing all sorts of problems, but the core problem of guests fleeing still persisted. Turns out that the hotel was actually on fire. That's why people were running away. The managers of the hotel weren't addressing their limiting problem. They were addressing all the problems they knew how to deal with. They were addressing all the easy problems, not the big scary one. Now that story sounds ridiculous, because it is, but I guarantee many of you watching this have a novel that's on fire, but is also getting some air fresheners and flowers put in its lobby. There's something that's constraining your novel, something that is preventing it from getting to the next level. Until you work on that one thing, you and your novel will be stuck. A novel can be dragged down by one poor element, one thing that doesn't measure up to everything else. Your weakest page or the weakest part of your prose is enough to bring the whole thing down. This is so tricky because it involves going into places we don't like to go. You could have built a perfect, immaculate setting to place your novel in, but improving the setting won't fix your flat characters. You may have mastered dialogue, but writing another dialogue scene won't fix the fact that your novel suffers from poorly written descriptions. You could have a character that really isn't working, but you're so enamored with them that you refuse to see the negative effects they're having on the story, and so they don't get fixed. Maybe you've learned everything you could about writing, but you're just not putting the effort in. The road to improvement might mean spending more time on your novel, but that's time that you're not willing to commit. Committing that amount of time seems kind of scary. Every writer has aspects of the craft that they're drawn to. We naturally put more emphasis on these areas at the expense of our less favored areas. There's this lack of equality to your development. Some areas get better while other areas lag behind. And it's almost always the areas we aren't giving attention to that start to lag behind. And these are the things we generally don't enjoy working on. We get lulled into fixing problems we know how to fix, to work in areas we are comfortable working in, to double down on our strong points at the expense of our weak points. There's an element of ego here as well. It's difficult to admit that we suck at something specific, and writing is such a brutally difficult art form on its own, even when you're working in areas where you feel comfortable. The good parts are hard enough, the bad parts are just plain scary. Our desire to avoid these problems is so strong that we often can't see them. It's why it sometimes takes critique partners, someone else reading your novel for you to realize where the flaws are. You need somebody with some distance to the project, somebody with less of their ego's skin in the game in order to give the novel an objective evaluation. Much of the time, though, I would argue we know what the problems are. It's admitting the problems that's the hard part. You have passages in your novel that you skim over when you're rereading it. You have lines that you skip when you're reading through. You know you have weak scenes. You know you have characters that could be better. You know that you don't write enough description, or your dialogue scenes go on too long, or you tend to linger on exposition but don't work on body language. You know these problems exist. At least I do all of those things. Whatever you don't like to look at, whatever you have a hard time reviewing, that's usually where the problems are. What makes these problems hard to solve is that we haven't solved them before. If you've never written a good description before, it can be hard to do. If you've never buckled down and done a massive rewrite on an entire novel, then it can seem really intimidating to do. If you've never pulled off a character, then it's hard to do. But that's the whole point. That's why you're here. Why you're here writing, not like why you're here watching this. You're here watching this because of this, obviously. Obviously. Getting better at the craft is about growing your capabilities. It's about doing things today that you weren't able to do yesterday. It's not about stagnating and staying in a comfortable place. The value you get from writing doesn't come from practicing things you already excel at, but rather from practicing those that you don't excel at. Doing the hard thing is what makes you capable of doing the hard thing. But before you can do that, you need to figure out what the hard thing is. Critique partners, as I mentioned, can help point this out. Also, giving yourself some time away from a piece of writing can give you a new perspective. This is why a lot of people will advise you to wait a few weeks or even a few months before rereading a draft. Think about what you don't like to write. Think about what you feel you aren't good at. Think about where your weaknesses are. Doing more of that is often the road to improvement. Just like I need to improve my transitions to the conclusions. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Said that line like there was another thing that I was going to say, but I don't have anything else to say.